So I said I'd answer the top questions that were asked, and this was one of the biggest ones there. How do I find a good real estate mentor and not get ripped off by another BS guru LC? You know it's a big RIA guy when we're talking about LCs. The big RIA guide to finding a badass mentor. Let's get into it. I'm sick of getting ripped off. Azam, please help. Ripped of. Azam, please help. Did you copy and paste that? I wasn't. Don't even look at me. This happens all the time with that red part. If you aren't working with new students, what can I do? Yes, I don't always work with new students. Look, the whole point of what I do is I just want to find more Annas. That's it. There's not much money. I know people say there's a whole bunch of money to be an information marketer. If you do this correctly, there's not really that much money, honestly. Always ask yourself, if you can buy a guru, if they're so successful, how can you buy them for so cheap? Even when you buy a book or something, it shouldn't go that route. Get a mentor. One of the biggest. And today I'm going to answer this question. So many people have asked this, and then they'll send a link to like some Instagram influencer who's like, I'm a self-made millionaire, and all this. Like, man, you guys, I promise you go to this class, you are going to find someone that's going to be badass for you and it's going to help you do amazing things. I'm not saying it's me necessarily, because it might not be me. You should only be around people who make you feel aligned with your destiny. The destiny is the perfect combination of your passion, your gift, and your calling. You know it's your calling because it keeps calling. As they say, that's going to help you do badass stuff, and it's going to help you do amazing things and get things really moving in a way that you really, you could change the world and make a lot of really cool things happen. How do I find a good real estate mentor and not get ripped off by another BS guru? How to get trained to save the world, be a superhero, and do totally badass stuff. So, what is that? Okay, the Big RIA 10 question spear. Who is that guy? Oh, is that the Africa? Do Africa. This is a great quote we've been using for years, where the guy is like some MMA fighter, and he's like, it's like Khabib. Khabib's dad used to make him wrestle a bear. This guy had his son go down with this little like match in his mouth, but it was like paper that was on fire. And he was like, you don't know what he's doing because it's this tiny camera with him. And he's like on his elbows. And then all of a sudden he sees this giant like 10, 15 foot snake, and he wrestles it and he pulls it out. And then when he's done, he lets it go back in the hole. And it's like, what was that? He's like, oh, that was his warm-up. That's how he warms up. The guy sends his kid down in the place. Then it was this woman from like 2020 or something. She's like, oh my God, a total Karen. She was asking this African guy, how can you make your son do that? He's just a child. And he said probably the best answer ever to that. He said, I see no child. I see only small soldier. I've been saying that for years. Anytime someone says something to me, I see no child. I see only small soldier. Okay, 10 question spear. I don't know what that means. Okay. So it's a spear because you're hunting a good mentor, and these are 10 questions that'll help. Oh man, I'm with you. I feel you. All right, we talked about this earlier. Okay, here are the 10 questions. Get these questions down, understand them, and everything will be fine. This is not the title it should be out here. Okay, these are the 10 questions. Forget that bold part. I don't know what that means. All right, so number one. I'll tell you something, this will save your life. We have so many people that tell us they spent thousands and thousands of dollars. We just made a video about how to make whatever, 10, 5, 10, 15 grand. I don't know, and we did the accents. Did we already go over the accents? We already do the accents. The devil. We didn't, or did we already do? Okay, well, because that was the other question about how to do the voices and, the impressions and stuff and how that was used. That's part of the first part of that was the humor class. So I've shot like 10 class. I don't know where we're at. Okay. But if you went through that, basically, why did the icebergs are able to go against the wave? Because they're connected to the deep current. You want to be connected to the deep current. The biggest problem people have is yourself. The reason everyone says, oh, I'm surrounded by LCs. No. You have one LC in your life. It's you. Fix that. Everything else gets fixed. All the problems you have, it's internal. Look at the internal, fix it within you, and everything else will get done. You only have one. People always notice how we all know other people, of course not you, but we all know people who have a relationship throughout 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. They're always with the same person, just a different face, right? Why? Why do they find, pick, and attract the same kind of person? Because the only toxic relationship you ever have is with yourself. Every other relationship is a representation, a reflection of that relationship. So fix the internal. I've talked about that many times. This will help you do that. One of the things you want to do, whenever you're talking to a guru or anybody with the plan of paying money, first of all, the idea that, you don't need to pay money. There's enough free advice out there. Get the most expensive advice is free advice. The best thing I learned, I'm so grateful. I shouldn't say the best thing, but one of the best things I learned, and I'm so grateful for this lesson, is when I was young, forget this self-serve thing. This is not what the headline should be. But I learned, if you want to learn how to do something, go find someone who's doing it and pay them whatever it takes, and be grateful. When you find the right mentor, the right coach, the right teacher, the right trainer, be grateful you get to exchange only money and not blood and freedom like most people have. Most people through slavery and indentured slavery did that knowing their whole lives they would be slaves, come into the new world, come into America, just so that their kids would have the hope of just having freedom. That's it, just having freedom, not even financial freedom, but just, having freedom and potentially doing something. Just important to go back in history. The further back you go, the further forward you can see many times. So keep that in mind. Come from a place of constant gratitude. So here's the first question to ask yourself. When you're looking at somebody, ask yourself, what is the exact definition of success? Input and output. This is important. Here's what that means. Don't ever go into somewhere where you're going to buy, I'm going to get into commercial real estate, or I'm going to get into social media marketing, or I'm going to get into whatever. You want to get really specific. What is the exact thing I'm going to learn how to do? What is the exact input that I need? So when somebody says, I made $50,000 on my first deal, that's horseshit. Don't ever believe that. Let's say that the 50 grand is true. You don't know what it is. Is it equity? Is it cash? How much cash did it take to make that deal? How long did it take? And when's their next deal going to come? If you're going to do 50 grand a year, let's say you make 50 grand next year, 60 grand next year. What if you don't make it until November or December, and all year you're working around the clock, not knowing when your next paycheck's coming, having to get a second job? You got to create predictability, regularity of transactions, and that is a skill. So I'm going to go over the question, and I'm going to go over the way it should be, or the way it is versus the way it should be. Most people's definition of success with any programs, any course, real estate or anything, is just very vague. I'm going to show you how to, be a real estate investor, or be a full-time wholesaler, or even make 6 figures a month. That's a little bit better because there's some specificity there. You want to get super specific. What is the exact definition of success? So, for example, for the way it is for most people, it's not very defined. You want to have a really specific definition, like, for example, 10 to 30 grand a month. That's why I always say that. I make it very clear, you're going to spend 20 hours a week, and you're going to make 10 to 30 grand a month. That's the input, 20 hours a week. The output is 10 to 30 grand a month. The input also, no money, no credit, no loans. You need to have something specific like that in one sentence, 20 hours a week, no money, no credit, no loans, no banks. You're going to make 10 to 30 grand a month. You want something real as specific as that. And so that's a direct input and a direct output. Number 2, and when you see that, by the way, the second thing you need to see is when you have that sentence. So every time you're going to go for a trainer, don't try to buy a book or buy an ebook or get on free rep. Don't do any of that stuff. What I do always is get that free stuff or get a little bit into their world, and then find a way to pay them $15,000, $20,000, $100,000, whatever it takes. I paid $100,000 to Big Rex to learn how to buy the companies the way that I did. I'd have no problem doing that. I knew I'd make it back. When I want to learn how to write copy, I got so lucky to find the best copywriter alive, the best copywriter who's ever lived, really. And I paid him over 30 grand. Had no problem with that. I wasn't belly aching. If you really cared, why not work with me for free and I'll give you twice as. I wasn't a dickhead. I wasn't. It's funny because the more of a dickhead you are, the more impossible like everything is. Everything's mission impossible for the LC. And so they're always looking at cutting corners and always, you don't want to be like that. Find someone that you can really put your teeth into and pay them whatever it takes for them to walk you through making this happen. So the first thing, exact definition of success, input and output. And then once you get that, you need to go and demand that there are stories that you can see that exact thing. I need to see people that started from zero with no money, no credit, no loans, and less than 20 hours a week, got their business up to 10 to 30 grand a month, in my case, for example. But you want to see that exact thing. You don't want to say a success story where someone's like, I did my first deal and made 100 grand, in 2 months or whatever. Well, there's so many questions. Again, how much input did they have? How many hours did they work? How much money did they have? Did they use their credit or their money? Because those are things you might not have, right? So you've got to be able to have the exact definition of success, the input and the output. And then you want to see stories that confirm that exact thing, right? So I've got literally thousands of pages of testimonials. By the way, I'm not saying this to make I'm not saying all this to make it seem, although it's going to seem like that, like I'm the only obvious choice. I built my everything I did around realizing, how do I know if it was my own mother, if it was someone in my family that was going to be a student of mine, I should be able to answer all these questions. I should be super badass with it. I don't obsess over this stuff or build this skill to be second best, right? It should be clear. There's nobody that's even in the same fucking universe as what the stuff that these guys on our team and our heroes are doing. And I don't want anyone to ever it's not arrogance. It's not me. I'm just saying that like I don't want to even be close to what anybody's doing. Like we want to build a nobody mountain, which is one of these things. Okay, let's get going. That's number one. Definition of success, input, output. Number two is who else around them on the team is getting rich in success. This right here, these first three questions will just change. This is the tip of the spear, and this is really all you need to look at. Number one, what's the exact definition of success? The input and the output. Number two, who else on your team is getting rich? This will knock out pretty much everybody you talk to. Whenever you see a guru or anybody, just ask yourself, who else is making money except for them? And you'll find that it's, I honestly don't know of a single person, not a single, and I've worked with all of them, man. I used to go to RIAs and do speaking and shit like that. I could tell you, none of them are making any money. No, they're like minimum wage working around this guy, or they're VAs, right? You're not going to find people on their team who are successful, which tells you one of two things. Number one, nobody makes money that works with you. Or number two, when they do make money, they leave you because you haven't found a way for it to make sense for them to stick around. So forget everything that they say about themselves. Ignore it all. Because if I am trying to convince you that I'm successful, everything I say about my success is already kind of tainted, right? It's kind of like you should assume it's BS, right? Like how much money I make or my cars or my houses. That's why, by the way, I never talk about anything I'm doing. You'll never hear me talk about deals that I'm doing or money that I'm making or my house or cars or anything. You don't see, I don't do shit like that. I always like DMX. Never talked about how much your watch costs. Nobody gives a fuck. Who else around them on the team is, you need to find people on their team around them. Interestingly, so the way it is for most people is no one around them is making any money because nobody's making any money. The way it should be, though, is that people around them, you should be able, everyone on our team right now basically was a student. Anna, Millie, going back, Sunny, Steph, Sam, everyone was actually a student. And they all got rich. They're all rich by any objective definition. And they're still around. They're still in my orbit because we have ways of making it make sense. If you don't have that, think about what they're saying, this guru, that nobody around them makes any money. And really, the only success story they have is themselves. The more you talk about yourself, the less you've done for other people, the more you have to talk about what you've done for yourself. And that's why don't ever be impressed or anything. This is America. You're supposed to get rich. Don't be impressed by Lamborghinis or cars or mansions, stuff like that. And sometimes that stuff's rented, especially these Instagram guys. One guy just got busted. Somebody sent me an article about that. Don't believe that stuff, man. Use this gauge that I'm using, these 10 questions, this 10 question spear. So first, what's the definition of success, input, output? Two, who else around them is rich? You want to see other people on their team who are rich. You want to be able to trace your finger back and say, what was the input and the output? So it's not good enough. I've got friends around me that have money. No, because they could have had money inherited. You don't know that. Who on your team started in the exact process I'm about to go through from zero with zero and got there, right? Make sense? Okay, number three, how exactly are they using their skill to improve the world? I love how skills in quotes. Thank you for that. So are they really that skilled? I mean, do they really have that much going on? And if so, how are they improving the world with that? We have a teacher in Uruguay right now who is developing this process potentially for being able to send water over Wi-Fi. It's totally bonkers and completely nuts. So if we can just send Wi-Fi, we can send food and water to different areas. If you get clean water, we knock out half of all fatal diseases, half of all disease on the planet, just with clean water. And that's an example. Those are the kinds of thoughts that that's the only stuff I want to be around. Turn off, we're really big. I don't watch the news. You are at every given moment, you're training the world. You're training the internet. The internet's the best example. The world is just a mirror, right? The internet, once you click on something, once you like something, once you comment on something, get a brand new computer. I was doing this experiment recently. We got a brand new computer. It has all these videos because it's trying to figure out who's using the computer because it connected to your Wi-Fi and they're wondering, of all the people in your house, who's on the computer right now? Once you click something, what happens? The entire internet will reshape itself to cater to what you just said you wanted. So every time you say something on the internet, how many times we say not great stuff on the internet, right? How many times do we click on stuff we shouldn't have clicked on or react or engage with stuff we shouldn't have engaged with? What happens? You're sending a message to the internet saying, give me more of this. Every time you click on something, every time you watch something, every time you say something, ask yourself, do I want more of this in my life? I say that because it's never been easier to change the world than it is right now. This is the single greatest time to ever be alive. And you can just use the same stuff. I always say this, go to bigria.com. If it doesn't blow you away, if it's not like the most amazing thing in the world, you're a dickhead. What I mean to say is, I can't help you, you're too smart. But if You would disagree with that because you watch the news. The world is not the best place in the world. It's not the greatest time. You would only disagree with those things because you've trained the internet and the world to be a mirror of the fact that things are terrible. Right now, anyone who has any skill, business or entrepreneurship, you need to be using that skill to improve the world and to help people who are not as lucky as we are. We are the luckiest human beings to ever walk the earth. When I look at somebody, I need to see some badass shit. And if I don't see that, I'm kind of like totally not impressed with like, oh, I've got all these, look at all these bitches, look at all my hoes, and like these like Instagram sluts that they've got, or the Instagram, what do they call it? Instagram hoes, or I don't, that's what they call themselves. I'm not being like mean. That's not, like really, this is like a time where you could actually, like I just said, we're developing a process right now. It might not pan out, but maybe it's something else that we're doing well to be able to, provide clean water. And one of the things we're working on right now, just a side issue, is to end half the disease on the planet, right? That's the kind of stuff you can do right now without leaving your house. And I say that because whatever skill people have, don't pay anyone unless they're actually doing something to improve the world. You're only here because you want to improve the world. So those 3 things will knock out almost everybody and make sure you're safe. Number 1, get an exact definition of success, the input and the output. Number 2, who else around them? Make sure there's people around them that are getting rich and got rich. Listen to them, that got to success, whatever that means. So when somebody says, 20 hours a week, 30 grand a month, there better be a shitload of people that are doing that. And where are they right now? How come everyone left you? How come you're the only person on your team that's making any money? And don't be afraid to call them up and email them, ask them like specifically about their business. Like, what are you doing exactly? And you'll see it's a revolving door. Like I've had people like Millie and Anna like for years, and we're family. You know what I mean? Like I've basically built a family. Like I'm not interested. We use this a lot. We call this the decade test. When you talk to somebody from now on, ask yourself, will I be talking to this person for the next 10, 15, 20 years? And if not, don't talk to them. Only work with like people, because then suddenly there's a lot less pressure on the conversation. You can have much more fun. You can say, you know what? You can flat out say to somebody, I always ask myself, am I going to talk to this guy in 20 years? And with you, I think I will. I think we'll be lifelong friends. If nothing else, even if you just met someone, it puts the pressure on them to be like, to bring their A game, We do this a lot with like realtors and people, and they immediately like, oh yes, and they nope. We humans hate to disappoint. So number 3, how exactly are they using their skill to improve the world? You better have direct answers. If you don't, I'd move on. Those 3 things. What's the definition of success? Input and output from 0, with 0 it should be. And who on their team is making money that way? 3, exactly. And give me multiple ways that they're doing like really badass stuff, like epic, life-changing stuff, really cool stuff that's, groundbreaking stuff that they're making happen. If they're not doing that, I'd move on. Now, let's go on further down the spear, up the spear. Number 4, remember the only way to judge them is with this question. So don't look at like Twitter followers or how many views they get. Don't look at any of that stuff, right? There's one question that you use to judge everyone, and that's the only question I should be judged with, or anybody else that's a trainer or educator or influencer or anything. One question, that is this. When somebody started from 0 and did what you said, what happened? That's the question. The only question that matters, all this stuff, that's the question you should ask yourself. When somebody started from 0 and did what you said, what happened? So there's people, you start asking around, you can see people that got in like lawsuits, went to jail, all kinds of crazy shit. Like when people listen to you, did they end up in jail? Like, did they get what? This is the only question that matters out of all this stuff. When somebody starts from 0 and they listen to you, what happens? So for example, this is why the definition of success is really important. So if somebody puts in the 20 hours a week, for example, they'll be at 10 to 30 grand a month. In fact, I will tell you this, I'm saying this on the recording, there's never been a single human being that did what I said for the 20 hours a week and didn't make 10 to 30 grand a month. Anyone can comment below and say, that's fucking bullshit, Azam. Anyone can say that. I'm telling you, you got to have, you only work with somebody who's like obsessed, who's got it down to like a science, right? And this question is the most important. It doesn't matter followers, none of that stuff matters. When somebody started from 0 and listened to you, exactly what happened? You should be able to answer that question for somebody you pay. So this is not a small issue here. This is like when we talk about the most important question to ask any influencer, trainer, guru, anybody, this is the question. What happens when somebody starts from 0 and listens to you? This is what you always want to think on your mind. Always keep this on your mind when you're looking at somebody. Don't look at like, whenever somebody has a result, you want to know what was the input that created that result and how predictable is it? One of the biggest mistakes that people have, one of the biggest challenges people have, why do people stay at a job when they know they can easily leave or, build their business or that these things that they want to do? Why does everyone stay stuck, kind of married and handcuffed to their job? The reason is because they don't have faith in their ability to create predictability, to create regularity. It's not good enough to go out and do a deal and, I made $80,000 or $90,000 or whatever. No, it's how much are you able to create and produce regularly. Our 3 money buckets: money now, money over time, money later. You want to be able to say, okay, I can make 20 grand a month now, this month, and I'll be consistently making 10 grand a month or 15 grand a month. And here is the exact predictable input that creates that predictable output. I can do it from zero with zero. No money. I can start from zero, no background, and no money, no input, no credit, nothing that you have to come up with. It's like I said, it's the top question. Ask yourself this all the time, and it'll be a lot easier to determine and to pick better people and to make much better decisions. One of the top things we look at when I say this, a lot of times people look at, somebody might be a best-selling author. People trust for all the wrong reasons. Just because somebody's a best-selling author, all that means is they figured out how to sell books, or more likely they figured out how to buy books, right? Because they're buying a lot of their books. It doesn't mean anything. And just ask yourself, what does that have to do with the question we just asked? What happens when somebody starts from zero and listens to them? That's the question you want to ask anybody. Don't look at the book sales. Don't look at how many views, likes, followers. None of that stuff means anything. If you look at any of the metrics, I've learned this more recently with this YouTube channel, with Big Rhea and Anna's stuff. And when they first contacted her, it was a long time ago. And I looked at the metrics. I said, there's hardly any metrics there. Why are they contacting you? Why is that, why is it even on their radar? And the reason was because of the engagement, and because it's one of the only channels that's what's called raw, like all natural. There's no buying in this space, in this industry. Everyone buys views and buys follow. Everyone does it. It's really cheap to do. And she's one of the only people that never did any of that stuff. She's real nerdy birdie, really buy the book stuff. And I wouldn't have bought them either. We're not doing either, because there's no reason. There's nothing. There's no money. There's nothing being sold, right? The only way that she's ever made money from this, or I have for that matter, is from actual deals, from doing deals. But it's an interesting thing that everyone goes out and buy these people, buy these views, and buy all these vanity metrics because they need to make people think that they're a bigger deal than they really are, because they need to sell shit, right? And it works for a lot of times. People look at that and think, oh, wow, well, that's pretty impressive. Again, not asking the question, how does that answer the question of, always ask yourself, whenever you see something, how does that answer the question? When somebody starts from zero and listens to you, what happens? What is the net result that happens? Why doesn't Azam talk about his own copywriting successes and wins? So this was 2 questions that we had about this copywriting. If you look into, like when I used to write what's called a control, which means that you write an ad or a letter that no one is able to beat, and they run it again and again and again. And if you have a control, then you get residuals and royalties, and you can then start licensing those out. And there's different levels. Maybe you make 5 figures, 6 figures. If you make 7 figures from your royalties or from your residuals, that's what's called like a king control. Like it's a rare, it's like a rare designation. And as some people have researched, it's pretty obvious. Anyone who knows copyright, and any like masterful copywriter, a few people have done this, and I'd recommend you do this. If you know anyone that's into copywriting that knows how to write copy, send them to Big Rhea and just say, how would you describe this person's copyright? And they'll know exactly who I train under, first of all, but they will tell you, I know this is immodest for me to say, but they'll be like, this is one of the best copywriters I've ever seen. I obsessed over that skill. And that's why I don't talk about it. None of my wins, when I had written king controls before, but that doesn't mean anything. Like, just because I did it, I obsessed over it. I went above and beyond. I spent a fortune, well, what many would call like a fortune. It was nothing for me. I had no problem doing it. I knew that one letter would make that would be my monthly income if I had wrote one letter. The amount of money I paid over 30 grand to learn how to write copy from the best copywriter alive. But again, I don't talk about any of my own successes because it doesn't matter, right? That's the whole point. The question should be, if you look for my copywriting, for example, what happens when somebody starts from zero and listens to me on copywriting? And that's why I'm always talking about other people. I'm talking about, here's the copy this hero wrote. Here's the copy that hero wrote. Here's a letter they use. Here's the email they use. Again, it doesn't mean anything with what I've done. What good does my copywriting success mean? People hear that and they think, oh, wow, he really knows what he's talking about. He wrote a single letter that he got paid 7 figures residually on every year. No, that doesn't mean that I know what I'm talking about. That may mean that I have that skill set. In that case, that's true. But it's not like I'm selling books that I don't have likes or anything. But what does that mean to you? It doesn't mean anything to you unless, again, I have been able to take somebody from zero and with zero, and they were able to go out and reproduce that result. If they weren't able to do that, or even if they were, this is like the top thing I'm saying, my successes are meaningless. It doesn't matter what I've done. It may be like, oh, he's done hundreds of deals. He knows what he's talking about. No, not really, because what good does it do if they don't know how to translate that, or they don't know how to reverse engineer their steps into exactly distill the exact steps you can take and you can follow within a very specific time frame, and you can recreate that result. It doesn't mean anything unless you can do that, right? This is like the top. Please take this away. What happens when somebody starts from zero and listens to you? That's the most important thing. If you ever catch me, you're not going to catch me ever bragging about myself or talking about a result I had. No. I'm always bragging about other people, because any skill I had is only as good as I am in making that result contagious and having other people achieve that result. That's what you should look for. Always do that, and you'll be much, much happier, I promise. And I'm talking about, by the way, go in someone and don't be, weird about paying money and stuff like that. Pay them whatever, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, 200,000, whatever it takes. Mortgage your house. Find the right person that matches this criteria. By the way, send them to me, because I will go be their best student. Number 5, will you be learning from them directly? If not, how can you learn from them directly? Pay whatever it takes. Just do it. Make it happen. You want to learn from someone directly. You just want to be able to talk to somebody. You want to be able to have an email, direct communication where they answer your questions and you're going to talk to them. If you're talking to somebody on their team, again, you don't want a cubicle coach who's looking up the answers as you're talking. You want someone who's actually done it, be able to do that. Number 6, are you scared of them? Is their work ethic and their skill team? This is super important. Just ask yourself, take a step back and ask yourself, if I had to compete with this person, would I be nervous? I look at someone like Bill Gates. He's a brilliant guy, but honestly, I think I could take him in any way, like physically, obviously, but I mean, like, I don't think that he's a brilliant guy, yes, but there's a lot of things that just went his way. I look at a guy like Steve Jobs, for example, and my ego won't let me say that he would have taken, but I mean, that's a really bad motherfucker. I mean, that guy was serious. I mean, he was obsessed. He was resourceful. They took everything from him, and he came back and just beat the shit out of them all. Like he's like not just like the combination of ultra high IQ, one of the highest ever, and EIQ as well, emotional IQ. I mean, he's like in the level. Think about this. In 500 years, they'll be talking about Steve Jobs and Azam, but they'll be talking about Steve Jobs. This is a guy who's shaped our world so dramatically. It's actually easier to talk about the parts of the world he hasn't changed than the parts he did. And he was gone. He had such a short, relatively short life. I say that because you should learn from somebody who's actually you're scared of. You're like, wow, if I had to compete with that guy, wow. Like, so when I find that someone that doesn't know how to cold call, they're like, oh, I build systems, then you're full of shit. If somebody doesn't know how to cold call well, they're not good at that. They haven't harnessed that skill. I'm not saying that they're definitely. Steve Jobs, for example, was the ultimate. He'd, go visit. Bill Gates, can you imagine him cold calling? Cold calling, it's not the end all, but it's like cold calling, copywriting. These are skills that, you should only, if you're not, by the way, if you're not scared of me, if you're not like, oh, that guy, then you shouldn't listen to me. I mean that seriously. If you're not like, wow, I'd have a hard time competing with Azam. Or, by the way, my team, they're all trained by me. You should look at them and be like, wow, that motherfucker's got their shit together. Like, you should be like, that's somebody that really understands stuff. Anna's a great example. This is someone who is very soft-spoken, who is like the opposite of me in many ways, doesn't study sales, never did any, wasn't into that stuff, and yet has such high compliance because of her caring, her compassion. Like when you take a lack of smoothness, a lack of presentation savvy, and a lack of that stuff, but all you do is care, that's how far you can go. I mean, she is a machine. Go back and look at Big Rio, the video every day until we got to the #1 channel on YouTube. By the way, did I mention that's the #1 channel for Indiana real estate? Gosh, I keep forgetting to say that. And we're also building the world's largest group of special needs business owners and real estate investors, all that cool stuff. So are you scared of them? Is their work ethic scary? When people are like, well, I'm lazy or I don't want to do shit. And here's a picture of me not doing shit with my family. Oh, man, don't worry. But that's not somebody you need. This is a time to be obsessed with your work and obsessed with the impact and the things that you can do in the world and the help that you can provide people. Not to be a dickhead and sit around on a beach. And what are you doing? All this that's all you can figure out how to do. Don't be. And their team should be skilled too. Don't just look at them. Again, look at the people around them. You should be scared of somebody, if not everyone on their team. These people are assassins. Thank goodness that they're not coming for me. They're not in my market. They're not, because if they did, I'd have no way to compete with them. That's who you want to learn from. Someone who's like actually scares you. So you should be scared of them, their work ethic and skill team. They should be obsessed. They should be on it. Bonkers. Number 7, do they have a nobody mountain that produces? That impresses, that produces? Nobody mountain. So This is probably the easiest. If you go to bigria.com, I've said this before, and you're not like, I say this to anybody, like they're not like blown away. Anybody who knows anything about business goes to that page, they're like, holy shit, like this is like next level stuff. If they're not, again, move on. I can't help. You're just too smart. I can't help you. There's other ways that I have of saying that, but that's like the polite way of saying that. They should have a nobody mounted. And like go to the motivated seller page. That's an example of a nobody mounted. There's not a better resource except for like maybe forums on the internet with multiple ways of getting free motivated sellers. Google only disagrees because we keep putting the name. Same thing happens with Google every time. As soon as we get to like 1,000, 1,500 hits a day, they contact us. They tell us to stop putting our name, our email, and our phone number in the videos. We don't, and they just cut us off at the knees. All the traffic goes back down to 100. Then we build it back up. I don't give a shit, honestly. If I had any need for that money, or if I thought that it was going to be a big deal, we would change it. But again, we're not building that because we're building a nobody mounted. Such an enormous amount of effort, such enormous amount of brilliance, collected brilliance, and brilliance we picked up along the way, an accumulation of brilliance, effort, input that nobody else is willing to do. There's honestly no human being on earth that is willing to put more motivated seller, the most important term, and the reason we pick motivated sellers, the most competitive term on the internet is real estate investing. Within that, the most competitive thing is motivated sellers. And so the most competitive industry, real estate investing and motivated sellers within that. That's why we picked this for the Nobody Mountain. But you should see an example of that. They should have a site that's like, wow, the amount of work and effort that this page took is insane. Like, wow, that this video took, that this brilliance took, that this model took to put together. Like, wow, that's crazy. That's bonkers. This house, for example, people come here and when they see how it's been fitted, basically we're paying for this whole thing with just a couple of signs, man. It's crazy. This is our special needs headquarters, by the way, so it's not my house. I'm like, oh, look at my house. But you got to, when you're working with somebody, you got to see shit like that. Like, wow, nobody is doing it like that. These guys are on another level. It's totally crazy, and that's what I got to get. Number 8, are they connecting you to the universe? We talked about this with the iceberg, being connected with the deep current, reality distortion field. When you are where you should be, the perfect connection of your destiny, what you love and what you're good at and what the world needs. Are they connecting you to the universe? So when you're in the perfect alignment, what you love, we have what you love is at the top, then we have what you're good at, then we have what the world needs. I always screw this up. What you love and what you're good at is your passion. What you're good at and what the world needs is your gift, and what you love and what the world needs is your calling. You know it's your calling because it keeps calling. As they say, the perfect intersection of your calling, your gift, and your passion is your destiny. That's where you should be. That's where you are at your best. You are unstoppable. You are that iceberg that's in the deep current. You're not going to be affected by the things that sway other people. Oh, let me open up this new tab. Let me go do this. Let me go do that. Or I got to go jump over here and do this. And you get your attention, your brilliance gets fractured. You don't do as many things nearly as well. You can do one thing well, 2 things okay, and 3 things not at all, as they say. You get focused. You know exactly what you're supposed to do. You are tapped in, full alignment with the person you're supposed to be, making the changes you want to see in the world. That should be the effect that person has on you. We have what's called the reality distortion field. I say this often, where when people go through something at Big Ria, if you don't feel like your destiny is being fulfilled, like this is the catalyst to help you get there and be the best version of yourself, I totally get it. I'm sorry that this isn't that for you, but it is that for others. You should see the emails that I've read, the feedback and the testimonials people say when they go like, oh my gosh, my entire life, this is what I wanted, and I didn't even know it yet. That's just a random text that Anna got earlier today that she read to me. Every day we're getting this stuff forwarded to us. If it's not that for you, that's okay. Go find where that is for you, though. That's who you need to learn from. What's called a reality distortion field. The hallmark of the ultra high achiever. The LC is just the LC, right? When you're an LC, you're going to find other LCs. And like when people, you should find someone who's obsessed. When you look at them, you're like, man, that guy's obsessed with what he's doing, with the work he's doing, with the stuff he's, and that obsession is contagious. Everyone on their team is obsessed. They're all like little, soldiers, all moving towards one goal. The RDF, the reality distortion field, Steve Jobs talked about this, where you create a field around you. It's like with dark matter. We've talked about this with quantum physics and with, 0-point energy. The amount of energy contained in the most microscopic elements is an insane amount of energy. And when you can tap into the universe, you can tap into that deep current, whatever it is, you actually have, look up the double slit experiment. Consciousness actually affects reality. You can have an impact on people when they come around you. There is an affect, on them, like an effect. You actually are able to impact their They're, we could get to like a molecular like a molecular level. There's been a lot of studies on this. I won't get into that right now. The point is that you've got a field around you, and people come around you, they instantly do amazing and badass things. I've been doing this a lot. This idea of you could convince yourself that the fact that you're here, that you're exposed to this material, it's made you some of the one of the luckiest human beings on earth. I've said this many times. I am insanely lucky. Everything goes my way. And I am so lucky that even if you don't have the golden touch, I have it so into such an extreme level that it will rub off on you. Just watching this video, things will happen in your life. I've used this example many times that, I've used several examples where people will, I'll start saying that and people will start looking in their lives for great things to happen, and great things happen. Now, is that because they're looking for things to happen, or is it because it's like the reality distortion field? It depends on whatever you look at. Consciousness will actually has an impact on reality. My point is this. I'm saying like 10 different things because I get excited when I talk about this. Only be around someone who's making you a better version of yourself. When you get around them, you fucking have wings, man. You can fly. You believe ultimately what Steve Jobs, like what people like that, ultra high achievers, when people got around them, they looked at what they previously looked at as impossible as not only doable, but easy. That's how it should be with you. You never hear ultra high achievers ever talk about how hard they're working. If you love what you're doing, you never work a day in your life. But also the hurdle for what's hard becomes invisible when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, when you're in full alignment. When you're doing LC stuff, when you're a dickhead, everything seems hard. Oh, I'm trying really hard, Azam. I'm doing this. It doesn't work in my area. That only happens when you're out of alignment. Get in full alignment. Everything will be fine. Only be around people who are connecting you to the universe, the best version of yourself, because when you get there, you'll be unstoppable. Go through our success stories. I've like literally thousands of pages. We were just getting these together. And there's so much more. I haven't even uploaded. There's like I'd say less than half of the success stories are even on the internet. You hear people this is what they talk about. Like, I'm unstoppable. I get out of bed like a bullet. My health is better than it's ever been. My relationships with my family are better than it's ever been. My internal mental health and physical health is better than it's ever been. Not to mention my business. People go from 3, 4, 5 grand a month to 100, 200 grand a month overnight. It's not that difficult when you're aligned correctly. Only work with people who are putting you in that place. Number 9, what is their real business and why do they train? This is super important. Whenever you look at somebody, ask yourself, well, how do they make money? And if the only way they make money is, selling shit online, like, a course and stuff like that, you should ask yourself why. Like, why are they training people? Is it just to make money? Because if you need the money, doing this correctly and making a lot of money, like even if they're making $1 million or $2 million, think about how a model works. Or like just one model that like Anna's used or one of our heroes has used, you'll make more money. And I've said this many times. I only want Anna's. That's the only reason I'm doing it. That's the only reason to answer this question for me. That's why I'm training people is that, I really do want just more Anna's. That's the only reason, because I'll make more money with her in 1 quarter on like one model than I'll make doing this if I had 100 students a year, you know what I mean? For multiple years. Like it's not going to make this is not, the way to make money doing this is to train people that you can partner with and you can work with long term. And again, what you want to see, because a lot of people talk about, a lot of real estate gurus talk about that, is you want to see people. Where are those people that you're partnering with that are making all that money? Where's that? Like that process you described. What's that definition of success, and where are those people exactly? You've got to get specific and see those examples. Everyone on my team, for example, in my case, is an example of that. But 9. So what real? Do they have other business? Do they have anything going on except for like teaching and selling stuff? And in the real estate world, though, everyone talks about doing real estate deals. But again, the more they have to talk about their own deals because no one else is doing deals. They haven't helped other people do deals. So make sure they've got like multiple. You want to study under someone who has a skill that's going to be transferable to any other business. Number 10, do you see your dream outcome in a student? This is super important. You should see someone that is doing exactly what you want to do, not in that person, not in the guru, but in somebody, a success story or somebody on their team. Like, that is exactly what I want to do. That's exactly the outcome that I want to have. So in Anna's case, for example, like building the largest group of special needs business owners, we do like 50, I don't know how many other really cool things that we've got going on. You should look at that and be like, or somebody else on our team, and you should be like, you know what? Not that you want to model their life. I'm saying that the outcome, like that is exactly what I want. I want to make 100 grand a month from working with inner city farming, for example. That's exactly what I want. Whatever, like that right there is what I want to do. Make sure you see that outcome, because if you don't see that outcome, you're not going to be the first to make it happen. So those are 3 questions. Number 1, what's the definition of success? Get the input and the output. Number 2, who else around them on the team's getting rich? How exactly are they using their skill to improve the world? Number 4, remember the only way to judge them is this question. When someone starts from zero, with zero input, no money, no credit, and listens to what you said, where do they go? Number 5, will you be learning from them directly? If not, then how can you learn from them directly? And who will you be learning from? Number 6, you better be scared of them. Scared, yeah! Number 7, do they have a nobody mountain that produces? They better, and it should actually create some result. You should be able to go with their nobody mountain and be able to go out and create the result that they're describing. Number 8, are they connecting you to the universe? They're getting you aligned, man. Most people, you're not feeling anything, and you're being a dickhead going into it, and they're just going to be a dickhead, and you're just going to mirror each other. You got to fix your internal, right? The external gets solid, and then you'll know this is where I need to be. This is where I need to put my energy. Number 9, what's the real business? Why do they train? And number 10, do you see the dream outcome in a student? That should be good. Don't settle, you guys. Use that and make sure someone matches that criteria. Don't settle. Your dreams are there for a reason. BigRia.com. Go to BigRia.com. I would never do that. She has to use a voice. I wasn't going to use that. Okay. Go to Don't Settle. You guys can do this. You guys can make it happen. I love you so much. I am with you. Hopefully you use the Big Ria spear and you do some really cool stuff. All right. Thank you so much. I love you guys. Go to BigRia.com. See you there. Thanks.